with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, getting some conflicting news reports out on the economy. Obviously, it's very tough out there. And, last week, we got the May unemployment numbers, and they were actually better than people expected. This week, we see another 1.5 million Americans filing for unemployment. So far, the unemployment number in June is 14.4%, so it's up a little bit from May. And but I'm seeing people getting back to work. It's maybe not a groundswell, but it's starting to happen, and it's very interesting. Even a small geographic area, I'll take South Florida for an example. Boca Raton, you go to Boca Raton right now, the restaurants and the plazas and everything.
It's packed.
It's packed.
Yeah, it's packed.
It's like you wouldn't think that there was even social distancing going on in Boca Raton.
I was there Saturday night. Houston's in Pompano, 2-hour wait if you didn't have a reservation.
Yeah.
That hasn't been that way in months.
Yeah.
2-hour wait.
And that's with having a lot of outdoor seating. So it's not like they don't have capacity. It's because, there's capacity, but
every other table. And then all the outdoor seating.
And right. And they're closing off streets now just to put tables out in the streets, which is, I think that's really cool, actually. But then you go down into Fort Lauderdale, 20 minutes away, and you don't see that. Places, are like it's slowly coming back, but not nearly as much as you see just a few miles north. One's in Broward County and one's in Palm Beach County, but what a difference that makes.
Well, I'm in Coral Gables all the time because I own the magazine. And I just did a webinar with Nina Pernetti, the most successful restaurant, and the most successful restaurant in Coral Gables, Cafe Abrace. Can't get him in. Not to the level that he really needs. Now, he's open, he's doing his thing, he's very successful, he's got lots of money, he'll ride it out. But not seeing the numbers that we thought. And he thinks it's going to take till July for people to have the comfort feel because they're so scared, which is something we'll talk about.
In some areas they are. In other areas they're not. It's very fascinating. But a lot to talk about there. But let's talk about the retail segment. I mean, the retail segment in the United States employs a lot of people. I'm a manufacturer of retail consumer type of appliances, and it's a very important part of my business. And I can tell you, on the e-commerce side, I mean, we've never seen it like it is now. I mean, the numbers are absolutely astounding. However, on the brick and mortar side, they are still struggling to get open, and many of them won't make it. And that brings us to our first guest. Very pleased to have on with us Gerald Celente, who is the publisher at Trends Journal, and he's got a lot of predictions and forecasts on this. I'm very pleased that he's joining us right now. Gerald, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thanks for having me on, Neil and Doctor.
So, here we go. I mean, you look at what's come out so far. J. Crew, J.C. Penney, Neiman Marcus, Pier 1, Hertz, and the list goes on. And it's not even over yet. And you're going to see more of these bankruptcies. And a lot of iconic American service companies or retailers are declaring Chapter 11. They're asking for bankruptcy protection. And your forecast is that there will be no retail recovery, and it will go from whatever we are today to perhaps something worse. Can you explain?
Yeah, we're looking at what we're forecasting as the Greatest Depression. This is unprecedented in world history. This has never happened before, where governments lock down entire nations. These are the same people, they started all this, they called it the COVID war. You go back to when all this broke out, we're fighting this war, we're fighting this war. These are the same politicians that take us to war with no exit strategies. Hey, how about that Afghan war? That's only going on 2 decades. How about that Iraq War? Oh, yeah, great success. Oh, not a better success than the Vietnam War. What I'm saying is they take you to war with no exit strategies. They took us to this COVID war with no exit strategies. What people can't get in their mind is that politicians did this. These are stupid people. These aren't the brightest cats on the block. I say this from experience. At 26 years old, I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. And I could go on from there. Name your government, name your country, name what they do successful. If anybody could show me, put a list, or else I don't want to hear a word. They locked down these economies, and now they're making up these new regulations. Well, you could open up, but only seating outside, and you have to be 6 feet apart. Hey, does the wind blow more than 6 feet? No, the wind stops at exactly 6 feet. Don't you know who I am? I'm the health official, some little low-life bureaucrat that never had a job in my life, but I've been sucking off the public tit, so I'll tell you what to do. Oh, I got another one for you. When you're sitting down, they're very kind to us, you don't have to eat with your mask on. But when you stand up, you have to put your mask back on. This isn't coming back. In the restaurant business, at the best of times, business is good. And then most people aren't even making it. And now they have all of these regulations on top of regulations that are costing these restaurants and other businesses more and more money to keep them operating. You said you're in the business of supplying product. Well, you know, America's not a big product-producing nation anymore. We become a service sector society. And now they've ripped the guts out of the service sector. This isn't coming back. It's going down.
So look, I want to pull back for a second. I agree with what you're saying. And I'm very worried. When I talk to the retailers, and look, I'm in Coral Gables all the time. That's where my magazine is. Coral Gables is the Beverly Hills of Miami-Dade County. It is enormously wealthy, which is something that we could talk about. Maybe that market will do better than others. But when I talk to the folks who own these incredible restaurants, it's a sea of restaurants in Coral Gables, very expensive restaurants. And my best friends who own them are telling me, you know what, 25% of all the cats that are out there, they're not coming back. They cannot afford it because you're right. Because they're always on the edge. Their gross profit margins are so small that any variances, and they're in trouble. That's not coming back. The retailers, probably the smaller retailers, may not come back. Those with big balance sheets might be able to do that. But I got to tell you something, that when you go to the major mall in Coral Gables, the Shops of Merrick Park, drop-dead gorgeous mall, beautiful place, top stores, completely. They got some stores boarded up. So the question is, are these guys really going to come back? I don't know. Are we just deluding ourselves?
Yes, you're deluding. I think people, again, I'm in this business now for 40 years. My books are Trends 2000, Trend Tracking. My magazine, The Trends Journal, is a weekly magazine. This magazine's been written since 1991. And I'm not bragging, but I'll put my forecasting track record up against anybody's if they can show me what they've done over the years. I used to be on Oprah, the Today Show, Good Morning America. I got my facts out there. I only go by the facts. I'm a political atheist. I don't take sides on anything. You're a doctor gives you a diagnosis. You don't care about liking the person, disliking the person. This is unprecedented in world history. Locking down. And then they're making up these rules. By the way, this is totally unconstitutional. These are not rules passed by law. They're making this stuff up. People aren't going to come back. 25%, and phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You're making this stuff up. And here's the other one. You could sit outside. The weather's always going to be perfect outside. It never rains, never gets cold, never gets cloudy, never gets miserable. Only outside.
That's San Diego, just saying.
New York is dead. Where I am is dead. It's dead. Uptown Kingston, where I am, this is the first capital of New York State. This is becoming the new Brooklyn. You could Google in the word Kinsley, Kinsley, Vogue magazine last year. A hotel right next to me, 1864 hotel. They turned it into a boutique hotel and great restaurant from one of the top restaurateurs in New York. This place was booming. Dead. It's dead.
Yeah, but that's New York. But Gerald, there's other places in the country.
Then there's New Jersey. Then there's Pennsylvania. Then there's Ohio. Then there's Illinois. And then there's one after another. We're a nation. And and here's the other thing. You think college towns? How about college towns becoming the new ghost towns? Talk about retail? Oh, no, you can't come back. You're going to be socially distanced. Now you see the numbers are coming out. New college enrollments are plummeting. People can't afford them. They're out of work. Their fathers and mothers can't afford it, or mother and mother, father, whatever it might be. Kids can't get jobs. So now these college towns are going to go under. We are going into something unprecedented in world history. And again, it's not only in the United States, it's global.
Yeah, so that's some very scary stuff, Gerald.
Well, that's a
but
fact.
Like you say, you're basing it on a great track record of predictions, and I've seen your work. Gerald, we need to take a quick break. I want to ask you a couple more questions. Dr. Roffman wants to get back in the conversation as well. We're together with Gerald Celente. He's a publisher of Trend Journal. We're going to be right back.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Roffman, and we're together with Gerald Celente, who is the publisher of Trend Journal. So, Gerald, there's a lot of industries that's been impacted. Of course, the travel industry, the airline industry, the hotel industry, the restaurant industry. What are you seeing as far as the most at-risk industries right now? I mean, what are your predictions? We talked a little bit about retail, traditional retail, but e-commerce is doing absolutely amazing. First, what is the most at risk, and then where are the opportunities in this new economy?
The most at risk are going to be tourism and travel, hospitality sectors, and then retail following that. The biggest one we see, one of my books, Trends 2000, it was 1996, it was a national bestseller. I came out with the term interactive U, meaning interactive university. The education system we have now was invented by the Prussians at the beginning of the industrial age. Everybody was making their own things. You had shoemakers and this and that. So they needed to put people in centralized locations and teach them how to read, write, do math, and most of all, follow orders. That's our outdated education system. And if anybody thinks the education system is great, you knock yourself out. America doesn't even win, place, or show in OECD countries compared to others. It stinks. And again, if the education system was doing so great, so would our entire nation. So now we're going into a whole new model because of this lockdown, that we're going to start seeing more and more interactive education. And you're also going to see more and more people, as we've already seen, working from home. That's going to destroy, by the way, the commercial real estate sector and all the businesses that supported that. So all of that industry, there's going to be accelerating growth. This is just the beginning, the 21st century, of an entirely different education model. So, for example, say I want to become a doctor or whatever in any field. Then I could start going online and finding the best in that profession. And I don't have to go to a college or even go to a high school or a grammar school where people pass a state test and they all teach you the same thing. Now, with all of the different artificial intelligence and all the other things that could find out who we are and what we're best at doing, education systems could then be designed for the individual, rather than you have to learn science, you have to learn biology, you have to learn algebra, whatever it is. Everything's not for everybody. So to me, that's going to be one of the biggest revolutionary changes. And the places to look to for the companies that are accelerating in this, the best places to look are Asia, particularly India, which has been on this path before. So that's going to be some of your growth areas.
So, yeah, very fascinating. Rich, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I agree with what Gerald's saying. You know, I went to school at Syracuse. Syracuse lived on the university. It thrived when we were in season and we were in school. It didn't thrive when we were gone. Huge number of students, 30,000, whatever students there. My concern is when you take these small towns that have these colleges and universities, you shut them down as we have. They don't come back. Think about the economic effect, the trickle-down effect on that.
Well, the small businesses and the people who support,
gone.
Yeah,
who
support that population.
Right. And of course,
they're totally gone. The restaurants totally gone. The transportation totally gone. Even the airports that service going there, they're going to get hurt because they're not getting their fees because people aren't going there anymore.
But not least of which, Gerald, is the quality. What do you think about the quality of the education?
Well, it could be a better quality. It could be a much better quality. You know, in many ways, you still need to go, for some things, obviously, but other things you don't. And, I'm about an hour and a half away from Syracuse. I was up there a couple of years ago.
I know where you are. I have a lot of friends in Kingston, by the way.
Yeah, so, that place is pretty run down now, And now at the college, now it's not only going to be small towns. And you mentioned about airports. Oh, now you're already seeing how many airlines are cutting travel between cities. They're way down. And the smaller the cities, the more they're going to be cutting back. It's even going to hit a Boston, where it's loaded with colleges and universities. This thing is going to be so detrimental. And my greatest concern is, and that's why I'm very, very concerned, and that we're going to see riots, demonstrations, protests like we've never seen before. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah. Well,
it's the Rod Serling effect.
Yeah, we haven't seen that in America. But if you were to pick a company or two that was going to be winners in all of this, who would they be?
I'm not allowed to do that, but I can tell you my forecasts are in gold and silver. Those are going to be silver. I believe is going to really start to take a real boom because they're just printing all this cheap money all over the world.
Well, Gerald, we're going to have to leave it there. You got the last word on that topic. We appreciate you coming on and your predictions and so forth. I mean, you've called a lot of things. For the good of our country, I hope that you're wrong this time, though.
Well, no, for the good of the country, we have to unite for peace and restore freedom. And that's the way I see it.
Well, that we can all agree upon. Thanks a lot, Gerald. Gerald Celente, publisher of Trend Journal. Thanks for being on the show, Joe.
Thank you.
Coming up, we have Alfredo Ortiz from the Job Creators Network, and he's going to talk about, he just published a piece in Fox Business, small business is careening from quarantine to curfew and needs help. Yes, they do. And Alfredo's going to be with us just in a moment. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, very fascinating conversation with Gerald Celente from Trend Journal. And hearing his predictions, and he's made a lot of predictions over the years, and he's got a lot of things right. But I'm going to disagree with him on this one. I think the American economy is going to come back, and it's going to come back strong. But it's not going to be the same economy, and it's going to be that there will be losers, and there will be certain industries that don't perform well, in especially within the next 6 months. Travel, as he said, airlines,
big
hospitality.
Problem. I agree with that. Big problem with that.
But
serious problem with that.
But it's interesting because they have cut back flights, and I have a lot of people who fly.
They've also been adding flights.
And
Americans adding flights, Southwest added flights, JetBlue added flights.
And
that is happening.
And don't kid yourself. There's a lot of people on those airplanes. There are people flying. It's not like nobody's flying. Yes, it's down, but it is coming back in certain industries. I mean, we talk about e-commerce. I mean, boy, are they going to benefit out of this. They're going to do really well. And companies who have started transitioning to e-commerce, have a really good, bright future as long as they keep on it. And, they are able to crack that code with whatever product or service they're selling, and they can bring that online. I think you're going to see a lot of people, and especially kitchen table type companies, these little mom and pops who, from their homes have found a way to create an e-commerce platform. I think they're going to do really well. And I think you're going to see a lot of people employed in that side of the business. Traditional retail, well, that's another story. Are people going to go back to the malls? But hey, look, Main Street was replaced by the malls, and a lot of retailers on Main Street went out of business, but the malls thrived. So now you got the same thing happening to malls, which happened to the retailers on Main Street. And then what's going to come after the mall? And, that's that's really interesting to contemplate. Well, our next guest is a good friend of the show. He's just published a piece in Fox Business. It's titled "Small Business is Careening from Quarantine to Curfew and Needs Help." And our good friend, Alfredo Ortiz from the Job Creators Network, is with us right now. Alfredo, welcome to Made in America.
Hi, Neil. How are you doing? Thank you for having me back.
So, you're right. I mean, quarantine... quarantine seems almost like a lifetime ago, right? So now it's like you see these cities and, where the riots and the looting has been, and you got these small business owners, going from, being forced to close down to starting to open under certain restrictions. And now you see them out there, standing in front of their shops, begging, pleading to be left alone. They lost... If they were able to come back from the quarantine, now they're dealing with the curfew, like you point out in your piece. So tell us, what are you thinking these days?
Yeah, so, you probably add a third when I said, we're going from quarantine to curfew. Now we're going to regulatory quagmire. And it seems like that's where we're leading, because people are saying, we need OSHA, for example, to declare a one-size-fits-all regulatory approach to the COVID crisis and to what's considered safety protocols. Well, that's the pretty much the final nail in the coffin for these small businesses, quite frankly, because a Walmart, for example, can afford to maybe put in some kind of a temperature check system right at the entrance, almost like an airport. But, goodness, your local Main Street, grocer or any other, barber or vendor, they're not going to have the ability to do that. But that's something that just the other day, this something called the National Safety Council was recommending and hardly in any easy way was asking OSHA to declare were these mandatory federal regulatory guidelines on COVID. And we're saying, you know what, let that be the conversation that takes place within industries. Let the industries come up with their own protocols that they know works, and working along with governors and, different other state health officials. We don't need a federal guideline on this. Again, this is what we're going to end up having is what we saw in the financial crisis, right? The big banks getting bigger and the little banks going away. We're going to have e-commerce. You were just talking about it. I mean, quite frankly, it's the Amazon's just going to keep on getting bigger, while that small business retailer on Main Street is just going to go away.
Well, I'm wondering about the Main Street folks, and we're saying, we're careening, and we are, from quarantine to curfew, and we're hoping that some of these people can make it. Some of these larger ones, even like the Walmarts and the Targets, they're debating, some are saying, well, Walmart said we're opening up some of our stores, but not all of them. A lot of them won't come back. So those are a lot of lost jobs right there in the markets
right.
and in the areas that they really need to have these big stores for lots of reasons. Service to people who live there and also provide jobs to the folks who live there. But Alfredo, you know what worries me? What worries me is that you just said one size fits all. That can't work. You take someone like a Walmart, you say, you know what, you can't have more than X number of people in your store. You can't have more than 50% or 25%, whatever it is. That's still a lot of people. Now go to the mom and pop store, and you tell them, a jewelry store, for example, it's been around for 35 years, you have to have 50%. Well, 50%, they only get 4 at one given time, so they're down to 2. So the concept that centralized rules don't work. I thought we learned that with Joseph Stalin.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're absolutely right, and look, we actually did try to do that again. I like tying it to the financial crisis because that's the last really big what I call economic upheaval we had. What was that? And look how disastrous that was when we tried to apply financial guidelines and rules that are one size fits all. We literally obliterated over 2,000 community banks. And if go back to just recently the Triple P program, the Paycheck Protection Program. Who were the actual true heroes of that program to make it happen? It wasn't the big banks. It was the community banks, right? And again,
that's right. That's what most of the money was distributed.
No, 100% because they know the community. They're tied into the community.
We talk about small businesses being the backbone of our country. More importantly, it's the backbone of our communities, of every single one of our communities, right? It's the small business guy that really, and I say that in general, guy, female, whatever. That's what actually ties and binds our communities together. These small businesses are so integral. People will feel their loss. Mark my words on this. When those small businesses already, walking down a local main street that I'm close to, I'm already seeing 3, 4, 5, businesses out of probably 50 closed up already permanently. And that's just right now, right? And so we estimate it is probably going to be 2 out of maybe every 5 small businesses aren't going to make it through the next 6 months. And, it was great to see the jobs report on Friday. I have to tell you, that was a great, they were expecting 8 loss, and it was 2.5 or 3 up. So, kind of an 11 million swing, which is really unbelievable. And I have to tell you, that was probably almost exclusively due to the Paycheck Protection Program that was put in by the government, by the Trump administration, with Secretary Mnuchin and the SBA head, Ms. Carranza. And so,
Alfredo, we're going to have to.
Important.
We're going to have to take a quick break. Still a lot more to talk about with Alfredo Ortiz from the Job Creators Network. A lot more to talk about with your jobs in mind. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're together with Alfredo Ortiz from the Job Creators Network. Alfredo, staying on jobs and, the jobs report that you were mentioning and how that came in, and, this week, 1.5 million Americans filed for unemployment. It's down somewhat, but it's still a very, very scary number. Unemployment is still north of 14%. What are your projections? I mean, what are your projections now that we're going through this staged reopening? And you're seeing some glimmers out there in the economy, but, is this sustainable, and how quickly will our jobs, you are the Job Creator Network. So what are you projecting for job creation?
Going to be dependent, frankly, on the media and the liberal governors across our states. I just can't think of any other way of putting it. I mean, look today, like I said, the market's almost down 7%. And what drove that? Literally the idea that there's been an uptick in number of cases in 14 states, right? That's pretty much all of the news that's driven that. And Jerome Powell saying that interest rates are going to stay about 0%. I honestly don't think that really had much to do with it. I think it was the fact that people were saying, oh, no, here comes a second shutdown, right? And that's why we actually launched on Friday our flattenthefear.com campaign, flattenthefear.com campaign, because We want to make sure that we put a microphone in front of prominent physicians who are warning of also the negative health consequences related to that, in addition to the real information and real data that is out there on COVID, right? And so, because we're hearing is just one-sided in most cases, is a one-sided download of data to really scare the American public into continue to staying home. And even though the lockdown, so to speak, are being lifted, people are still scared to leave their homes, right? And this is what I call a demand issue. The supply may be fine because the barber shops are saying, oh, hey, you can open up, the tailor shops, the deli places, right? The malls are starting to open up. But if people are still refusing and don't want to go out because the media is making them fearful, and I'm not calling the American public, by the way, illogical or irrational. They're being very logical and rational because they're only being fed one side of the story. And so that's why flatteningthefear.com tries to put all the information out there, for example, so that we can make sure that we make the right educated decisions. Like I said, right now there's going to be temptation to say, oh, see the uptick in cases, we should continue to extend the shutdowns, and in fact, let's not even open up the schools, for example. Do you know how disastrous, Neil, it will be if the schools across the country don't open up in the fall? That means all those parents can't go back to work effectively. And I mean, I almost put those in air quotes, because even if it means going back to work at your own home, within your home, it's still going back to work. It's very difficult to be able to do your work and to take care of your kids at the same time. We must open up schools in fall. And when you look at the odds of having a disastrous, data and metrics of kids, let's say, right, of kids 18 and under, look at the metrics, right? I think you're 10 times more likely to die of a lightning strike than you are to die of COVID if you're 18 and under.
Well, you're right. Here's the deal. I think you're 100% correct. You can't get the truth out. Look at Alex Berenson. And he's been on all the talk shows lately. He wrote a book that tells the truth about the numbers and the COVID and the virus. He couldn't even get it sold on Amazon. And yet he's right now, he fought it, and he fought it by having good contacts on Fox, for example. Now his book is out. He's number 2 on Amazon right now. But he's out there saying the response we've taken has caused enormous societal devastation. And it's all based upon bad data. And let's just get the truth out about the data. But why is it then? I mean, Alfredo, you're right. You're out there. You're fighting. You do great things for society. I got to tell you that. And by the way, I miss your billboards. But just want you to know that
there's one in New York.
You're my favorite billboards.
We just put up.
But the truth of the matter is, why is it that Amazon wouldn't get that book out? Why is it that you can't get the truth out? Why is it that there's only one side with one information that's getting out there? And if we don't have the real information, we're really in trouble. Why is that?
Look, I mean, call me cynical, but I think there's really one reason, right? I mean, there's just the left absolutely under no condition will allow for a Donald Trump reelection. I mean, let's just break it down to that simple thought. And so allowing for success to be discussed and to talk about, and the real data that would say to people, hey, you know what? If you're 65 and over, please stay home. If you have an underlying condition, please stay home, right? We still haven't quite gotten to the point where we're going to have a cure. We may have one by the end of the year. We may have therapeutics done probably by September, but we're not quite there, so please stay home. But if you're 65 and under, re-engage with society, right? Let's go ahead and re-engage society. This thing right now today, right, we're seeing the market almost down 7%, really because the number of cases are going up. Neil and Rich, I've got a great solution on how to bring the case counts done. Stop testing. The only reason they're really going up is because the testing's going up. So just by logic alone, if the tests go up, the cases are going to go up, the absolute numbers. It's the infection rate and the death rates we should be looking at. And the infection rates are leveling off and the death rates are falling. And that's the real story, and that's not being discussed at all. I mean, tell me, Neil and Rich, where you can find that story, except for out on flatteningthefear.com. That's about the only place you'll find it. It's not around. No one's discussing it.
What do we got about 10 seconds left, very quickly. What do you think because of the demonstrations? Do you see a big spike coming from that? And boy, can you imagine once that happens, what the media is going to do with it?
Yeah, and that's probably unfortunate. I mean, let's take a look at the major metros and see what happens there. I find it just, devastating that, the protests were allowed to happen, but funerals, for example, weren't.
Or going to church.
More than two people. Yeah.
Going to work.
I mean, right. Essential thing. So to me, it's just duplicitous. And there's nothing worse than that.
Alfredo, that's unfortunately all the time we got right now, but we really appreciate your voice. Alfredo Ortiz, president of the Job Creators Network. Alfredo, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Rich. Bye-bye.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, it's always good talking with Alfredo.
I like
Job
him.
Creators Network.
Great guy.
Very, very good. It was founded by Bernie Marcus, who was the founder of Home Depot.
Co-founder of Home Depot.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Very good guy.
Very philanthropic human being. He and his partner. Great guys.
I got to meet him once. I was actually on together with him on the Sean Hannity show. And, I know he's a regular there, so he's on there quite a bit. But I got to meet him there. Very, very interesting man, very engaging guy. And let me tell you, he really believes in what he believes. And economic freedom is right at the core of his message. And obviously, his life story and Home Depot and incredible. And you talk about the post-COVID world or you talk about the COVID world, Home Depot has done incredibly well. I mean, everybody is at home doing home improvement projects. The parking lot of Home Depots around the country have remained very full.
Yeah. They haven't. It's interesting. You're 100% correct on that. And what we're finding, and we're doing this in my magazine, is that we are promoting a section that's out right now on interior design because people are home and they're realizing, hey, I got to change the sofa. A lot of sofas are being sold right now. If you look at the stats, they're selling a lot of furniture right now.
They're out of toilets.
Kitchen.
They're out of
bidets, that's for sure. Bidets are a big ticket item.
Kitchen appliances.
That's right.
And not necessarily the expensive, sort of high-end stuff is doing well, but it's really that value type of proposition that's doing really well. And that's where Home Depot lives. It's where Lowe's lives. And both of those retailers are doing incredibly well. But Alfredo, we're just ending on the word about, you take a look at the quarantine and all of the governors, especially up north, whenever you would see a group of people in the park or a group of people on the beach.
Or in their own boat.
Or wherever.
Or on a surfboard.
It was like
in California.
It was the end of the world.
Oh, horrible. Selfish. You're a selfish human being.
Yes.
Selfish.
And especially if it was happening in a red state like Florida, where you would have people on the beach.
Selfish, but a good tan.
Governor DeSantis absolutely got crucified within the media because of not shutting down the beaches and letting each of the jurisdictions decide what was best for their communities based on, the COVID situation there and the amount of people out on the beach. And oh my goodness, was he dragged through the coals on that. And now all of a sudden, you look at images around the country of thousands of people together, some wearing masks, but many not. And, that's just okay because, it's this big emotional outpouring. So I don't know why one would be acceptable and the other wouldn't. Hey, look, make them both acceptable, but just don't be so openly hypocritical about where one is okay and one is not okay. I mean, here, you could have demonstrate against the government, but President Trump can't have a rally, but you could demonstrate against President Trump in the thousands, but his supporters can't get together to have a rally. I mean, it's just something is wrong with that. No matter which side of the political spectrum you come down on, yes, protesters, peaceful protesters, they should be allowed to protest. People who want to show their support for the president should be able to show their support for the president. Both of them should be able to exist together without saying one is good and one is bad.
Not going to happen. It's not going to happen because the agenda is not going to happen. Look, the numbers just this week alone, the numbers they're noticing are coming up a little bit in the United States, and it freaked out the market. And they're saying, the numbers are going up. Tony Fauci comes on. By the way, Tony Fauci disappeared for weeks during these protests. Where was Tony Fauci saying, I think you should go home? I think you should get behind locked doors. I don't think we should let people to protest yet. Why don't we book a protest in a couple of months from now? He didn't see any of that. But when you want to reopen your state and you want to open your business, Tony just out there again today. This week, he's out there again at the end of the week. You can't have this. You can't reopen. You're opening up too soon. You may be getting these numbers up. Freak out. And then the news anchors who are talking about this, they're not even talking about the protests leaning towards increasing the COVID. They're not doing that. They're saying, well, we kind of think it's the states reopening too soon. And that's why I think it's going to be very hard to merge the two into a kumbaya moment. I don't see it happening.
Right.
I hate to be that way, but telling you the truth.
This election,
I got to tell the folks out there the truth.
This campaign that we're about to witness is going to be like
unbelievable, like you've never seen in your life.
One, a virtual campaign, and one, the traditional campaign. I think that's what we're in for.
Hide in the basement, Joe.
Well, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.